Don't build another agent until you finish this video. I recently got exclusive beta access to the Make.com AI agents, and I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you're well aware that N8N has been the top of the food chain for these low-code automation or agentic workflows. Well, Make.com has an answer to that, and they're saying that their new AI agents are just better. So in today's video, I'm going to be comparing the two, putting that to the test to see who are the real leaders in the low-code automation and agentic workflow space. So if you started out using Integromat or Make.com like I did, this software has a very special place in my heart. It's extremely user-friendly. They have, a lot of documentation and tons of native API integrations. They are behind when it comes to the current AI landscape, but they're trying to change all that. So in a previous video, I built a personal calendar agent in N8N, which is, my favorite agent building software tool. And so I'm going to show you how to build the same thing in Make.com just to compare the two and see which one's better. So let's start with a quick demo. Typically you'd want to, connect this to some chatting interface, but I'm going to be doing everything within the module itself. So these are the Make AI agents. These are some of the tools that I've built, and I'll go into all of that later. There is a prompt that's specific for this agent, but you can also add additional stuff like today's date is this, and using the default duration. So let me get rid of this, and let's start with so this is the first question or task we're going to give this agent, and you can see it already created something here. We're using the default duration, which is 30 minutes. Now I want to do another one. Oops. So let's run this. Okay, so now it's doing the hour-long meeting here. Now let's do a get function. So get event. Let's do what are my meetings today? So let's look at the output. You have 2 meetings today. There's one here. Here, okay. And then the last thing we want to do okay, perfect. So now that we know that all of the tools that I built actually work, let's go into the details of how to actually set these up so that you can do it yourself. So this is the first tool that we have, a create event tool. So what you would do is add a module, Google Calendar, create an event, and instead of running things on a schedule, like at regular intervals, you'll run it on demand, basically saying whenever it's being called by another workflow or an agent in this case. When you open up the module, again, it's pretty straightforward. You connect it to your Google account, you connect it to your calendar, event name, start date, duration, whatever fields you want. And you might be wondering, how can you have a variable when it's the first module in a scenario? That's when we have to come down to the scenario inputs and outputs, and we have to assign and create these variables, which sounds a little confusing, but it's very straightforward. Add item, just the name of the variable and a description, which will help the AI be able to assign certain information to these variables. So for example, if we go to event name, you'll see name of the event, start date, same thing, duration. We're doing a default value of 30 minutes and attendees, email addresses of those invited. This one actually has to be an array. So this one's a little bit tricky because in case we want to add multiple attendees, we're just going to combine them into an array. And the next and final thing we want to do is have a scenario return output, which goes back to the agent. So it'll look something like this. Scenarios, return output. And same thing that we did for creating input variables, we want to create an output variable. So in my case, I just called it event creation status. So you go here, same thing. And in this return output, you can specify what you want to have in this variable. So like the event ID, the summary, and the start and end date. The next thing is the get event tool, which you're going to need if you want to update events, delete them, or get any specific details about it. So similarly, we're going to run the same Google Calendar, but instead of creating an event, we're going to be searching events. This is the format and how I'm doing this. So we're basically saying the start and end date. We're opening it up to the entire day, right? So the start range, we define that input variable here. The end range, same thing. And now we're just specifying how we want to define what's going to be the start and end date of our calendar. Now we're going to have a filter here just to make sure that if we call this tool, we want to only filter the events if there are events in our calendar. Then we're going to run a tools or text aggregator tool, just so we can group them together if there are multiple events, and we're going to group them by event ID, status, name, and then the start and end dates. The final step is just the same return output scenario. For my output, I called it get events, return list of events. And this is basically just spitting out whatever I specified in this text aggregator. So this is basically the return output. The final tool is the delete event tool. By now, I'm sure you understand how this works. Event ID. So this is interesting because we need to call it from the get event tool first. So that's how I'm specifying it here. The event ID of the ID of the event, run that tool first. So it'll first come to delete an event, and then it'll realize that it needs to run the get event tool first. Then it'll run the get event tool, then it'll get the get ID or get the event ID, and then spit it out into here. And then same thing, scenario output. We are just specifying an event deleted, which is just the status of the event deletion. So I know in the N8N video, I also had an update node and I think a couple other things, but you guys get the point of how to build these tools. It is annoying that you can't, have it natively in one scenario. You kind of have to create separate tools and then call those tools, which is kind of how N8N was originally. But I'd imagine as these features develop that they'll probably have something like that available for Make as well. Now the final step is actually just setting up the AI agent. So if you go to the left here, AI agents beta, you'll create an agent here. I already created one for the personal calendar agent, and this is where you prompt the agent, right? So this is all basic stuff. These are the 3 tools. So down here, after you actually create these tools, you'll just add them and connect them to your actual agents. Just hitting check and then add. So let's quickly go over the pros and cons of Make.com AI agents versus N8N. We obviously have the very friendly, user-friendly interface. Make.com has a lot more native integrations, which means you don't have to play around too much with HTTP requests. Their focus is on simplicity, as you can see there. And I did speak to the team at Make.com, and they are trying to build right now a native knowledge base, which is very, very cool. So imagine right now in N8N, if you wanted to give a brain to the agent, you would have to connect it to some vector database like Pinecone or something like that. Now they're doing this all in-house, which will make it just more simple to supercharge your agent. Now for the cons, this is an issue that I've had with Make.com for a while. There's still limited custom code. So depending on how much code you write, that could be not that important to you. But N8N, you can actually just write the code within a code node, versus here, it becomes a lot more tricky. Now, the Make.com also is less flexible for complex workflows. You have to build tools across multiple different scenarios and then connect them all at once. Not only that, but it's also only on the cloud, right? So when you have these high volume operations, unlike N8N, which I showed in a previous video of how to host it locally or on your server, which will make it essentially for free, Make.com is going to be racking up all these costs for each operation that you run. The last thing is that it lacks advanced testing. Like you cannot pin data. There's no native chat tool to test with the agent. Um, but I'd imagine that this is still in the beta, and as this continues to mature, these are some things that we'll see very soon. Now, I might be biased, but to me, the clear winner is still N8N. I would really only recommend make AI agents to people with a limited technical background who are not planning to implement code, or they don't want to play around with these HTTP requests and they want these native integrations. But really, in every other use case, N8N is better. It's more flexible. You can do a lot more within one workflow, and it's just a more dynamic software. But I'm curious what you guys think about this. If you had the chance to play around with Make Agents, did I miss the mark on this? Did I miss any pros and cons? Or what would Make.com need for it to overtake N8N in the agent building space?